11 years ago, we met firearms instructor Wesley Lagomarsino since we both had been mentored by Network Advisory Board member Masad Ayub. Wes has been telling armed citizens in Northern California about the network ever since. Thanks, Wes, and welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Gila.
I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your background and how that's led you to where you are today, please.
Sure. My background, I guess, would probably begin with having been a victim of a violent crime. I was held hostage in a robbery, and where the police surrounded the building, and they ended up capturing the bad guys when they left me and my grandfather alone. It was our own store that we owned. They left us alone for a minute. I had a knife in my back pocket. I was able to cut the duct tape off of us and get out the back door, leaving the bad guys to the police. And they caught him, they prosecuted him, which, it's justice, I guess, But they were there to execute me as a gang initiation. So that followed suit with all the trial process, and then that gang hunting me later, putting a green light on me is what it's called. So I got kind of sold out on concealed carry or what have you, using martial arts and other types of weapons as self-defense early on in life, late high school, and then joined law enforcement after that, San Joaquin County Sheriff's Department, and did 8 years with that department. I left there on great terms. Went to the feds for a very brief stint as the layoffs happened when Obama took office. So I was part of that, basically. I was just provisionally hired. I wasn't even really actually hired yet because I hadn't been to FLETS yet, which is Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And so a couple days later, a friend of mine calls me up, a real smart man, actually, high IQ, and someone I really respect. And he says, well, they were picking you up. The Secret Service, that is, was picking me up because of my weapons and tactics experience and all the classes I've taken and my enthusiasm, right? And he said, why don't you do that privately? So 14 years later, here I am. That was in 2009, July 2009, that I started Lagomarsino's Firearms Institute, which was just kind of on a whim. I got into the industry right at the right time with regards to concealed carry in the Sacramento area, starting in. They didn't even have a process yet at the Sac County Sheriff's Department, so I got to get in on that and help out with that. I even got to help out Anthony Tannehill with the formation of Firearms Policy Coalition and CalFFL. I wasn't like a key player. I was more of a think tank idea guy and a consultant, all the way up till 2017. And I don't know, I've gotten to train with some of the best instructors in the world, in my opinion. I've learned and grown a lot, and I really respect what this martial art is. And I look at it as a discipline and a way of life. And I don't just mean concealed carry, but I mean martial arts in general, your ability to defend yourself. And I put a lot of emphasis and value on our Second Amendment that gives us that ability to use force against others to preserve our way of life. So I guess that's kind of my philosophies that I subscribe to.
That's a real high angle view because I know that there's been a lot of things that you've done, and you've got shooting championships, that are pretty high level. You've taught for years and years. You're associated as the host for several very big names, and as I talk to you and feel like I get to know you, I see a lot of details. I see a lot of inputs coming in from different things that contribute to a high level shooter like you, and there's so much that goes into why you hit consistently, why you hit accurately, why you hit quickly, and the repeatability of it. Everybody can get lucky once, but but there's that the reliability of it. And so I'm wondering, as an instructor, if there's fundamentals, if there's categories that you introduce students to, starting with safety, of course, and if there's these things that if they're not mastered, the shooter's never going to even get a small echo of what you've been able to do as a shooter.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me begin by saying that I wasn't always a accurate and great shooter, of course. Like the how to get great is going to come from finding someone that already is and doing what they've done, obviously, right? So I got to give a lot of credit to a friend of mine, Damian Vaught, who was a junior Olympic champion shooter back in his day. And then go fast forward considerably to meeting Masad Ayub. Oh my goodness. I mean, that was like a dream come true, just even taking a class from him and then what have you, being mentored by him and what have you. It's awesome. And of course, Gail as well, his wife has just been tremendous. They've been so great to me. And I could talk about them for a good hour to 2 hours. So I'll cut it. But Mike Seeklander's been also very key in my success with the ability to shoot, along with Travis Haley, kind of stimulating the idea of this being more scientific. And funny, prior to studying law in college, I didn't get a law degree. I didn't go the Juris Doctorate. I went into law enforcement. But anyway, whatever. I don't want to misrepresent anything. Basically, I was really into sports science. I was a basketball player. Hence, I'm wearing the UOP, shirt today, and whatever their basketball program still means a lot to me. I go to their games a lot. So carrying that over into like sports science, right, with shooting and seeing competitors kind of go that out a bit. But Travis Haley even talking about the biomechanics of shooting. So I met a brain surgeon that doesn't want his name mentioned. I talk with him on a regular basis, but it's sad, when you think about it, like he's worried about the backlash at the hospitals, plural, that he works. I will mention that he was somebody major over at Stanford University for a long time, and I'll just leave it at that. But he stimulated further what Travis kind of dropped the seed on with taking a class and hosting him regarding understanding the muscularology and even advanced learning concepts. And I'll give credit to Dr. Sokolsky out of Stanford as well. He doesn't really probably even know his name's going to get mentioned, but basically he's the head of psychology over there, and understanding how our brain will basically memorize to the subconscious, said simply. And we need to be able to do that. So in starting this out, it had to be that how are we going to be able to complete a task without having to put conscious thought into it? It's going to be accomplished by breaking things down into smaller chunks. So the primary categories that I really break shooting fundamentals down into, consequent to everything that I just set up, I know it's a little long-winded, but is going to be that you're obviously your gun safety, then your gun manipulations, and then your shooting fundamentals, and after that, dynamics. So dynamics being like movement and like awkward shooting positions and such. I'll leave it at that. But getting into gun safety, I like to basically make sure people understand that their muzzle direction and their finger placement and timing to and from the trigger are going to need to hold and be the priorities the entire time they're touching the gun. And where's the fine line? When you touch the gun, you're responsible for that. And the condition of it is, of course, you got to put it in the condition that you need it in for whatever you're going to do next. So it's, anyway, with that, moving to gun manipulations, really on semi-autos, racking slides and putting mags in and out. But I got to make sure that these people will continue to keep their fingers in the right spot and keep the muzzle in the right direction while they're manipulating a gun. And so I really work a lot of repetitions in people with that prior to even advancing them to shooting fundamentals, which hinders my business a bit. People want to go straight to dynamics. They want to barrel out of cars. They want to stack up like they're a SWAT dude, and all that way early in their skill development. And I'm kind of that, who was Karate Kid's Mr. Miyagi in that respect, even though I'm not Japanese, I'm Italian. But and I'm wax on, wax off a lot with people. And I make them do repetitions to memorize and begin memorization, and then tell them to go home and do the repetitions of this. And even to this day, I daily do repetitions of just the timing of my finger to the trigger and finger off the trigger. And I know what you're asking about is more shooting fundamental related. So let me get to that before I, start getting down a rabbit hole with reps because I love doing reps of stuff because I know that's how you're going to be able to perform during a fight if need be, or even a competition, which it comes pretty easy once you have things memorized to the subconscious. And I guess I should back up and tell you, you're going to need to do 10,000 repetitions over a 6-month period, preferably with no days off in between the sleep patterns, of sets of reps of a smaller portion of the bigger picture. So you got to break things down to smaller chunks and do a lot of reps. And that's about 60 reps a day will get you there. You can take some days off in between, and I always say practice to fatigue, not to injury. So if whatever you're doing it can become injurious, don't do that, obviously, and take the days off. But then your 6-month period is going to prolong. So getting into shooting fundamentals, I break that down into grip, body position, the least important fundamental of shooting, because you could be in a pretty off balance, awkward shooting position, and still be effective. We've seen that in competitions, let alone in real life incidents. But body position, then grip, sights, trigger. So, I could go real deep into all of those, but let me turn that back over to you. And I know that answers the question as to how I'm breaking that down.
Well, and I think I really want to give a word of praise for making people get those fundamentals before you let them start bailing out of cars. And I understand the pressure there. We all want to have fun, but it's not fun if we shoot ourselves in the thigh. And that's where we're going if we stretch beyond where we've got that habituated grasp of safety, where our finger always indexes, et cetera, et cetera. So, big kudos for you for letting the go fast boys go somewhere else and helping the people who are serious about this, because at some point, I think that at least for our demographic at the network, we're talking about people who are going to carry it on their body day in and day out, and it may be under poor conditions. We may be fatigued when we put it on in the morning. There may be other things that are not going well. That foundation, that basis has got to be what carries us through that period of time. And if we haven't had the guidance from someone like you saying, here's these 4 or 5 things, and these are things you've got to get into your long-term habituated operating procedures, because they're the things that are going to keep you from shooting yourself in the leg, or worse, shooting your child, or something of that nature. And so the stuff is serious, and you have to make that prioritization that you've explained so well. So very good on that part. But you mentioned so many interesting things, and in the interest of brevity or manageable length at least, let's pick number 3, which is about sights and how to explore, let's say, leveraging the way we use the human eye, the way we use the pistol sights, and bring those two together for best results.
Well, sights is a big topic right now as the fad trend, if you will, of your red dots on pistols has resurfaced. And a lot of people think that that's something that is new or something. It's not. I remember back in the 80s when I was just a child that it was something, your Doug Koenigs, your Robbie Lathams and what have you, shooting the Bianchi Cup or whatever, right? So watching red dot resurface is pretty neat. I've been shooting red dot pistols since 1993. That's when I started doing it, and didn't really think a whole lot of it, to be honest with you, but it has got us to dig deeper into the use of sights and into how our eyes work and the differences between the two, which is really fun because I'm known as an iron sight shooter. People think I'm anti-red dot. I'm not. I still have red dot pistols. I'm looking at a safe in the background there. I got safes all over the place, 3 of them in this room alone. But basically, I enjoy red dots, but I don't think the reliability's there for my comfort level of self-defense. There's too many ways it can fail. And if it doesn't, there's a slight advantage to it. I will admit that. The advantage is very slight for your upper level shooters though. So it's not something that's just life-changing. But what we're really looking at that correlates to red dot or just your regular old iron sights is going to be kind of how your eyes work and what they need to look at. With iron sights, the difficulty, I guess, is in your sight alignment, you've got to align two objects instead of just placing the one dot over the target. So the two objects obviously are the front sight, and everybody teaches, and they should be anyway, sight alignment, which is aligning your front with your rear sight, and then sight picture, which is aligning all of that into relatively the center of the target. And knowing that the gun itself, being that you're extending it out away from your body, it's never going to stop moving. So you have some sort of acceptable, what's called natural arc of motion, that you just got to get used to, and don't worry about that. But I will say in iron sights, the comparison of the front sight to the rear is the most important thing. And unlike in rifle shooting, where a lot of people, use the adage focus on the front sight, I don't agree with that at all for pistol. I don't agree with that for rifle at close distances. In teaching CQB, close quarters battle with rifle or shotgun, you don't do a hard focus on your front sight unless you have a really, really difficult shot. So unless you're further back too, that would be where your shots get more difficult. So your close range pistol, you're 25 yards and in, the sights can be somewhat blurry and still make good body shots. You're not going to get good headshots at 25 with blurry sights, but you want them more clear. But what you're comparing are going to be you could say it a couple different ways. The top edges of what you're looking at with the front sight and the rear, or the corners of the top of the front sight compared to the corners, the inside corners of the rear. I love how Julie Golub says that. She even gives a diagram where she circles the parts to look at. She's one of the best instructors in the industry, hands down. Give her a shout out. I can't wait to train with her. But anyway, basically, that's in my opinion, the easy part. We all know we're supposed to get them aligned. And then when we move the trigger and the gun goes off, what are we supposed to do then? They go extremely blurry, and if you're gripping really well, they don't move that much, and they will probably realign themselves if you're gripping correctly for the most part. But post-detonation and during the detonation, what are your eyes supposed to do, right? First of all, we got to cover like how to avoid blinking. And we should even back up maybe another step into whether to use one eye or both eyes, when you're shooting. So let me do that first. Whether to make a decision on one eye or both eyes, it's not a simple, well, you should always just keep both eyes open. And I hear that a lot. I disagree with it. If you're shooting at difficult targets, squint an eye. Kind of when in doubt, squint an eye. It deals with when you have both eyes open and you're looking at your sights, your dominant eye is looking aligned with the rear sight, front sight, or your dot and the target. And so basically what you need to consider is that your other eye being open, if you're focused kind of 20 inches in front of your face, you're going to have cross vision, creating double vision or a superimposed other target off to the other side that you're going to be looking at. When those targets actually get so far apart that they separate instead of overlap, that's when your brain says, I don't like what this looks like. I'm not able to differentiate as well. And unless you're really, really experienced at looking at that, and you've done that thousands and thousands of reps, I don't think that you should be challenging yourself to that during a fight because some guy on YouTube said, keep both eyes open, So when in doubt, squint an eye. I found that most people's eye width is pretty close and most people's reach is pretty close to the same. So the triangulation of that, about 10 yards on body shots, is about where people's threshold is, where they start to need to squint an eye or want to squint an eye on a 8-inch target zone, like on an IDPA target or something. So with that, treating my range as a laboratory, I wanted to mention that at some point, might as well say it now, because that's how I treat this. I treat the overall big picture as a martial art, but also the scientific aspects. The range is an experimental laboratory where we can get in reps. We have fixed distances on targets that aren't fighting with us. They're not shooting back, or they're not moving even most of the time unless you make them move. But it's a really neat thing to have a static range that you can go to on a regular basis and get that experience or those experiments in. With that, keeping one eye open or squinting an eye versus keeping both eyes open, I would tell you difficult targets, squint an eye. Easy targets, keep both eyes open. And when you're shooting red dot, keep both eyes open and stare through the dot at the target. So I didn't cover that yet. But when in doubt, when you use an iron sights, squint an eye. It doesn't take that long, and usually the eye will squint while the gun's extending, so there's no delay, unless you're just delaying because your timing's bad. So then, how to avoid blinking, right? To avoid blinking, it's real simple. You scowl your face. You basically flex the muscles around the eyes, and you make it to where I can't blink right now, right? Like you look at this, it's kind of an angry look, but it's what we do when we catch a baseball. It's what we do in pretty much every other sport when we get hyper focused on what we're doing. So when it's one eye open, I'm right eye dominant, right-handed. So basically, you would squint the eye down. It doesn't have to shut all the way, but you'd also scowl this part of the face around the dominant eye. And that'll make it to where when the explosion that you're holding in your hands, which is not a normal phenomenon, right? Throughout the rest of your life, you probably won't hold explosions other than shooting guns. 20 inches in front of your face, your brain is going to say, danger, I want to blink, whether you're wearing eye protection, which you obviously should when you're training, or not. Maybe you're in a critical incident and you don't have that on. But anyway, if you scowl the face and you practice reps of just that, extend the gun out in front of your face and scowl your face. Extend the gun out, squint an eye, and scowl your face. Make sure that you flex those muscles on a regular basis. A lot of people say you'll never look at your sights too. I hear that nonsense from people that don't shoot very often, that got into a shoot and they say, I didn't look at my sights. I know, because how often do you put the gun in front of your face? That would be the logical question to ask. Whereas a guy like Masad Ayub or Mike Seeklander, right, or even myself, I put the gun in front of my face every day. So every day I'm doing dry practice, so many days, usually 3 to 5 days a week. I'm out on the range actually discharging guns. So of course I'm going to put the gun in front of my face, look at the sights, even if I get into a shoot, regardless of the level of danger. And you can see that with BJ Baldwin's shoot. He was 10 for 10 hits back in 2020 when he and Tori Nanaka got attacked. I don't want to bring that whole big topic up, but how did he effectively from 20 yards actually, make hits? And he's never been in a fight before like that. He's never been shot at before. It was because he's a master level shooter with USPSA, and he shoots about 50,000 rounds a year, same as me. And he puts the gun up in front of his face every day. He doesn't know how not to look at the sights, or what have you. With that, once you can align them, once you then can figure out whether to squint an eye or not, and then you can say, all right, I'm going to avoid blinking. Then it's a matter of coming back full circle. We all know how to line them up before the shot. How about during the shot? What do we do with the blur? We should be tracking the front sight in relation to the rear. Is it going up and right, up and left? Is it dipping right before the shot? And then where is it recovering to? So we've got some questions that we could actually get answered if we just look for the answers. And same thing with the dot. Where does the dot track to in the window? Most right-handed shooters do not contract up their tricep and deltoid on their right arm very hard when they shoot. And so their gun actually does track up and right when they fire the gun. So to fix that, obviously, just kind of flex those muscles a little harder, and you'll watch your gun go straight up, straight down. But anyway, with that, I'll get off of that because I could go down that rabbit hole all day. With that, when we're tracking the sights, that data that it gives us is telling us when to shoot the next shot, especially for rapid firing or shooting a volley of shots, because we shouldn't be just shooting because the gun's in front of our face. We should be shooting because the sights are aligned. And then it also tells us what muscles are contracted correctly or incorrectly. And you can actually, during a volley of shots, if it's multiple shots, you can fix that during if you messed up and didn't flex the muscles right, which is pretty interesting. I'll breeze over that as well. I could go down that one for a while. How about after the shot, right? Post detonation. You have the pre-detonation, pretty much everybody does that right. And then while they pull the trigger, a lot of people mess that up by adding pressure to their grip, and that will dip the gun low left for right-handed shooters, low right for left-handed shooters. Some people will loosen their grip, and then that makes the gun just kind of go wherever while they move the trigger. but then during the shot, track the sights so that you can figure out muscularly what to do with your grip and how fast you can get away with pulling the trigger. And then after the shot, make sure that you get realignment of the sights. Make sure that you get them lined up and they're focused again. Where a lot of people really mess up, me included. This is my nemesis. No one told me for a long time, or they told me and I wasn't ready to listen. I will admit that. That happens a lot too. Um, I could give example after example of working with Masad or Mike Seaplander, and then asking them, "Did you teach that the last time that I attended this curriculum?" And they say, "Yeah, it's written right here." And when the student's ready, right? So, yeah, exactly. And that's always exciting. I'm like, "No way! There's no way that you taught that." Anyway, but I hadn't listened to that for a long time. That you need to basically not shift your eyes from the sights over to the target to spot your hits and then back to the sights. What a waste of time that is. Let that shot go. Go look at your hits after you're done with the volley, after you bring the gun back to the ready position, you know. And that's kind of a nemesis that I still work on a regular basis when I'm shooting like bullseye, when I'm shooting really accurately. Um, anyway, I just did a display for my students 2 days ago, and I caught myself. Very first shot, it was just 10 yards, but it was into a 1 inch square. So, and you're so curious as to where exactly you hit that on my first shot of 5 rounds was all I was shooting. It was in the 1 inch square. It was a great shot with a Hellcat, mind you, Springfield Hellcat, the small one. And basically, I looked beyond the gun over at the target and then back to the sights and then continued my volley, and I did pretty well. I'll just leave it at that. And then, but afterward, I told the students I'd made a mistake, and they said, "No, no, it doesn't look like it." And I said, "No, visually, I made an error. The error that I made was I shifted my eye from the sights over to the target on my first shot to see where I hit instead of tracking the sights during recoil and making sure that I get them realigned uh, for the efficiency, really. And when you're shooting a volley or five like that from 10 yards into a 1 inch square, you're holding your breath pretty much the whole time too to limit the gun movement. And if you take all that time to look back and forth like that, this is just for competitive secrets here, then basically you're holding your breath all that time. You're going to fatigue out and the gun's going to start to wiggle more and drift more. And your last few shots of the volley are actually probably going to be outside of the target zone by a little bit. Small target shooting is really difficult. But anyway, before, during, and after the shots, track the sights. Really, my mantra is grip, sights, trigger, and then off trigger, off sights, off grip in that order. That's how you're going to build a shooting position. So anyway, yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. I guess I'm looking at my notes here to make sure if there's anything that I wanted to say. And I would say doing drills regarding each category, scowling your face in a dry practice drill, sticking the gun out in front of your face and shifting your eye from the target over to the sights and comparing front to rear, or staying on the target and putting the dot up in front of your face and getting that path of the gun. That's really important with whether it's iron sights or a dot, but even more crucial with the dots. Where dots fail a lot is when you get into awkward shooting positions. The windows can be so small that the shooter will push the gun out in front of their face, and because they're contorted in their body, it's not a normal push from the ready position out to an extended position, and they can't find the dot in the window. Their mind immediately goes to, "Oh crap, did the batteries go dead? Is something wrong electronically?" And it sucks when that happens. And you see them, they delay the shot, hence why I don't really carry them for self-defense. But anyway, and then you look and the battery is fine. It's just that they don't have a good path of the gun. So, and then, yeah, exactly. Something that's not commonly talked about with red dots. A lot of people talk about the other ways that they fail, but not necessarily that, because most people just practice two-handed standing shooting. They don't practice control positions. But doing a drill where you're telling yourself, I even say it out loud, track the sights, track the sights, track the sights. So even if I get other fundamentals wrong in that moment, as long as I track the sights during recoil and I can kind of call out on that shot that the sights went either straight up, straight down, up and to the right a little bit, or maybe I flinched and they dipped. I don't flinch that often anymore. I'm fortunate in that, but I do still flinch now and then. But being able to see it is whether or not you say, "Hey, good Wes," or "Nope, bad Wes." You screwed up and you looked over at the target during, as soon as the gun went off, you didn't track them the whole time, or maybe you lost track of them because the explosion was about to go off. Maybe you blinked. Um, and so your measurement of success isn't even about where you hit on the target on that drill. It's about whether or not you actually track the sights during the shot. And it's a whole nother way, a deeper dive into how to train and how to practice so that you can develop these good habits and skill sets. And then what you're going to end up with is being able to piece all these little pieces together that are memorized to the subconscious that you won't have to think about when you go to perform. And I guess I should mention that before I turn this back over. I look at the shots fired, meaning when you go out and practice or train or whatever you want to call the overall big picture. A lot of people call it training. I break it down into three categories. You've got new education, coaching, whatever, when you're taking a class and you're getting new concepts up in the brain and you're saying, okay, I haven't done that before. Or you're being critiqued heavily by a coach. So when I shoot with Mike Seeklander or Mossad, they're my primary coaches and mentors. I want them to critique me and I want to treat it like this is new education. Then the big vast majority of your time, ammunition, and money will be spent on the next category called practice. Right? Like, so we got to get out there and put in the reps. And if you don't put the reps in, that new education that you got, it's not going to be memorized because you did it once or twice. And hence the failure in law enforcement and military where they rarely actually require their guys to go out and practice. And unless the officer is an enthusiastic gun guy, and he'll be known as the gun guy. They'll call him Tackleberry, whatever, right? Like I had the nicknames back, whatever. So unless they're the enthusiast, they're probably not going to go out and practice. And that's huge. That's where you can't just take training and then not do anything with it. So whatever, practice and then testing, which is your performances, your competitions, your qualifications for your CCW or for your law enforcement or military exam. And I look forward to performances. And now, and even when I demo for my students, I am so excited to get out there and, people, oh, he shows off or whatever. Well, no, kind of, maybe, I don't know. But that's not the point. The point is I want to talk about something. I want to get an intellectual understanding going of what we're trying to focus on and accomplish. Then I want to demo it. And that way I can sell to these people that are wondering, can this guy put his money where his mouth is? And then I want to say, all right, do you have any questions? And then now do it, right? Let's get some reps in under my direction or my staff's direction. And let's get you practicing the way I practice. And then you'll end up with, if you keep doing this, the results that I get or that Mike Seeklander gets if you really practice a lot, or Mossad gets, these legendary shooters, they're amazing, mesmerized me when they started shooting in front of me. And I said, how is Bob Vogel's gun not moving when it goes off, right? So I went to Bob Vogel after I was on the same range as him at the U.S. National Championships 2014 over in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had it was a fun story, I'll make it short, but we had a big tornado coming in, headed right toward the United States Shooting Academy where we were holding the match. And Bob and I stayed out at one of the safe tables and dry practice. I was just following his lead. Basically, it's like, he's staying out, I'm staying out because I want my gun to perform like his does. And he won the whole event, by the way. He was the top shooter for the whole IDPA event. We didn't know that yet, but I asked Bob, I said, how does your gun not move when it goes off? And he goes, come here. I could tell you all day, and this goes back to tactile learning is going to happen from a tactile methodology of teaching. So he replaced, I'm right-handed. He says, extend your gun out. Now take your left hand off the gun. And he replaced my left hand with his. and he squeezed hard and twisted into the gun real hard. I never knew you needed those directions of pressure or amount of pressure on a gun to control recoil. He said, don't do that during the match. And I'm like, I'm not a contender for first place. What do I care, right? And so I did that during the match, and I had a good result on the first stage that passed the tornado. It didn't hit our range. The hail came and all that, and it passed us. It took a beeline 90 degrees. It was awesome, and just missed us. And then I was first shooter up on the next stage, and I said, I'm going to do what Bob taught me, and I killed it. I did really well, but the next stage was more dynamic, and hence dynamics take over the brain because that's where your conscious thought has to go to. And you know, I wet the bed, however you want to call it. I didn't do well. And Bob says, see, I told you, don't try to implement new ideas without having done the reps. And I went, I'm going to go do the reps. Now, every time I see Bob, I only see him at SHOT Show usually now. But I always thank him. I say, you know, that you're the guy that taught me, and I'm the guy that's taught all these people over in the Sacramento and Bay Area and Lake Tahoe and Reno area, you know, Stockton. And those, without that education being passed from him to me, I wouldn't have been able to pass it to the people I passed it to. And who knows, that could save somebody's life someday. So.
And what's important is you're doing the reps and you're leading by example, because the people that you mentor, that you break these things down for, they need to be doing the reps too. But they're going to follow your lead by saying, you know what, every day this guy is doing the reps. Maybe I better also. So tell us a little bit about your classes. How do people find you? How do people get into a class with you? Does everybody have to start at 101? How does your school work?
Well, I break, and we'll kind of stick to handgun here because that's what we've been talking about. But I break my handgun classes down into currently, meaning I'm revamping these and going to start in on some smaller curriculums. I'm going to break things down even further into little 4 or 5 hour curriculums instead of all day. My classes are all day classes. My first class, it would be a basic fundamentals class, and I don't require everybody to start there. I realize that a lot of people have already got the basics down, but the next level class, I do highly, highly recommend, and unless I've seen somebody shoot and was impressed with their accuracy, I do mandate that they start at this one. So my level 2 class, if you will, is the accuracy development class. And I just call them Handgun Science 1, Basic Fundamentals, Handgun Science 2, Accuracy Development, Handgun Science 3, Speed Development. Because why would you be wanting to speed up if you can't shoot accurately? You know, and so then Handgun Science 4, Movement, Handgun Science 5, One-Handed Shooting and Manipulations, and then Handgun Science 6, which is Mastery. And it incorporates all the dynamics of shooting as well. You know, awkward shooting positions, shooting from your vehicle with the seatbelt on, blah, blah. Fun stuff. So how would they find me? I'm a people person, you know? I prefer people call me. And I might chew their ear a lot. I talk their ear off because if they're interested, I want to let them, I'll give them a lesson over the phone, you know, if they want to listen. Because I'm very enthusiastic about this, and I really care about the bad guy not being able to accomplish the bad things he was going to do. That's my passion. I want the good guy to win if ever attacked. And so if I can say something over the phone to a young man or lady that calls up and wants to listen, maybe they're never going to come to a class. I had one yesterday like that. I even told him, I said, hey, even though you're probably never going to come to a class, because he was looking for a different type of training that was credential related that I'm not qualified to give. And I said, but let me leave you with this. And I went down this rabbit hole with him. An hour and a half later, right? I'm like, do you need to get off the phone, bro? And he's just like, no, keep going. And I'm like, okay. So 2 hours, you know, of conversation with this young man, and it was very fruitful. And he told me he was thinking maybe of getting a concealed weapon permit in California here, which is widely available. Although the DOJ just put in legislation that starting January 1st is going to stonewall CCW by way of making no instructor approved anymore, which is really disheartening. That's a whole nother topic, but we're working on that right now. And some of us have been in that fight for a long time, you know, with DOJ and with the governor's office, really, the legislative office, trying to get them to differentiate us from criminals, and can't seem to do it. They keep thinking that because a criminal uses this tool and you want to carry this tool, you must probably be like the criminal. And then somehow the general public that's not into guns actually buys that nonsense, and votes a certain way, right?
Well, and think about the history of martial arts. There's been times, and I mean, we're talking centuries. There's been centuries where it's been repressed, but people still found ways to practice the skills. And whether they were having to defend themselves with a garden hoe or a blade, they still had times, and they still needed mentors like you to say, but here are these basics, because we're not born knowing that stuff. And so we need coaches like you. And I hope that network members will turn to you. I think that traveling some distance to get one of your classes or two, or get hooked is well worth the investment. And so there's just this tremendous amount of information that you've exposed yourself to, training for years and years, and with amazing names and amazing people. And then I'm seeing you distilling that down into the user level, and the things that took you to championship level on so much. Now your students are beneficiaries of that distilled but highly applicable material, and there is so much of it. So just let me give a shout out and say, if you are anywhere close to Wes, call him and talk to him for an hour and a half, but better yet, go to classes days after days after days, because one time doesn't do it on this stuff.
Well, and then how to get a hold of me, you can call, but my website has my phone number on it and has an email contact on there. Basically the website, lfiguns.com. I don't really respond to Facebook or Instagram messaging and stuff like that, but I do have Facebook and Instagram, facebook.com/LFIguns, because I am the guy that spends one-on-one time. I don't get you out early just because the class is small. I'm the guy that's saying, no, as long as you want to stay, I'm out here. We'll stay out here till midnight. We can shoot in the dark too. So at my range, really fun stuff.
I hope that a bunch of network members take advantage of this, and frankly, we distribute this outside of the network membership family. So guys, Wes is there. Go get some mentoring, go get some training with him. And Wes, thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you, Gila. And if people are wondering, I'm just south of Sacramento, off of the 99 corridor, about 20 minutes, 30 minutes south of Sacramento. So anyway, thank you, Gila, and thank you for all that you do, because you, Marty, and your team over there at Armed Citizens is amazing. I promote you guys in every class, and I will continue to, because I know that your heart's in the right place. And anyway, thank you.
Well, we love your students, and we love having you on board with us. Thank you so much, Wes.